complicated financial engineering that got them into so much of a mess. And they're in a sort of phase of transition. They slightly fear, and this is one of the great paradoxes of Royal Bank of Scotland, it's a really complicated business, too complicated some would say, but it fears that if it doesn't pay quite big bonuses, almost to the people who got it into this mess, it won't be able to get out of it, almost alive as it were, that in order to manage its way out of these £2 trillion of assets that it's got to retain some of the rocket scientists. Now people...
That's what John Sutherland was saying in the discussion on satire.
It is insane, and of course for most people this is completely mad. There's also, actually, there's one bank which I regard as a really interesting test case coming up, because we're not sure what they're going to do. Lloyd's TSB, or Lloyd's Banking Group, 43% owned by the government. It's not actually clear at the moment what is going to happen to the bonuses of their visible people on the board. I mean, I think there is a chance that they will be paid bonuses. I think if that were to happen, that would be pretty controversial.
Indeed so. Robert and George Cox, thank you both very much.
The time now, 22 minutes to 9. Israel's Prime Minister Ehud Olmert has vowed there will be a disproportionate response to any rocket attacks on Israel from Gaza. He gave the warning on Sunday. In an essay for this programme, the Israeli writer Amos Oz warns that a disproportionate response is an immoral response. Here he is.
Ehud Olmert declared the other day that Israel will give a disproportionate response to any further attack by Hamas on Israeli civilians. I think disproportionate response is an immoral response. I think disproportionate punishment is an immoral punishment. This disproportionate response will strengthen the extremists in the Israeli elections and will play into the hands of fanatics in Gaza and in the Arab world. Disproportionate military operations are basically no more than revenge, and revenge is no more than satisfying base, primitive instinct. I regard Hamas as a bunch of criminals who for several years now have been targeting Israeli civilians. No less than 10,000 rockets were fired by Hamas on Israeli towns and villages in the last few years. Hamas are a bunch of criminals also because they are using Palestinian civilians as human sandbags, and because they cynically hide behind women and children. Yet killing more Palestinian civilians will take Israel nowhere, because Hamas will not care less. As Hamas leader Khaled Mashal said recently in Damascus, and I quote, "The present generation of Palestinians may be sacrificed," unquote. The only effective Israeli military response is a measured, proportionate attack on Hamas criminals while attempting to spare innocent Palestinian lives. Egypt is procuring a ceasefire. Israel must give it a chance. Ultimately, let us not forget that an adequate and final blow to Hamas will be a peace treaty between Israel and the moderate Palestinian Authority. Such a treaty is possible and perhaps even imminent.
Amos Oz. Well, the Israeli government spokesman Mark Regev joins us now. Good morning.
Good morning.
Before we look at the morality of any such action, what is the logic behind a disproportionate response?
I think it's clear that if Hamas is shooting a rocket into Israel, and let's say this particular rocket doesn't kill anyone, still you have, it hits the city of Ashdod, you have close to 200,000 people running to bomb shelters. The normal fabric of